Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Chat EbT. I'm your host, Ebrahim Tayob. Now, I always love that phrase where we say, this man needs no introduction. But today that's true, but I'm going to give him one anyway. With over 30 years in radio, please welcome to Chat EbT, my guest for today, Mr. Ray White. Ray, thanks so much for being here, man.
Good to be here. Really is good to be here. Impressive, and I'm looking forward to a good session with you today. Be kind, be gentle.
Not intimidated at all. No, but firstly, I mean, you know, you've been in radio for such a long time. And I was actually thinking about all the different things we can discuss. And the one thing that I thought of is, if we look at TV, TV's changed over the years. You know, we had normal black and white TV, then we got color, then we had standard definition, high definition, we've got 4K, we've got 8K. But radio's pretty much stayed there, and yet it's changed. So, in your opinion, with your experience, what's changed in radio over the years, and what's stayed the same?
Oh, that's such a lovely question. So radio has changed over the years. So if you go back to, say, the Second World War, and radio was a means of communication, you were fighting the Nazis, they would broadcast into Europe. Things were totally different then. Families would gather around the radio, and this continued for decades after that. You had something called Springbok radio, eventually, in this country, in South Africa. And Springbok radio was fantastic because on a Friday night, you could get your family together, and they could watch something like, or listen to something called Squad Cars.
Okay.
And it was absolutely amazing. It was the theater of the mind. And you had these policemen walking. And it started out by saying they prowl the empty streets at night, waiting in fast cars. And as I say that, it just brings back all these memories. And it's like reading. It's theater of the mind.
Yeah.
That's gone now. Unfortunately, that is gone. That has been replaced by the video age. The video age is here. You can go onto your laptop. You can find any movie that you want. You can go onto social media and you can watch it as well. So that whole imagination is gone. So radio now is more fast-paced. You have people giving you the news on the hour, on the half hour, on the quarter hour. Something's just happened and it's bang, bang, bang. So we've lost that theater of the mind, so to speak, and we've got this high, this high frequency going at the moment.
No, and I'm glad you actually brought that up, right? Because the other thing that I think is quite fascinating is radio is still looked at a little bit like long-form media, right? But now, these days, short form has just taken over. We have Instagram Reels, we have TikTok Reels, we have YouTube Shorts. People are absorbing content in 90-second intervals, right? How has that affected the world of radio, where we still have these bulletins that run for a period of time? We still have these interviews that are 25 to 30 minutes.
Well, it depends. So where do people listen to radio? Mostly in their cars.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. There are people at home at night who've got their radios on. Sometimes the radio is on in the kitchen. But very often from 6 o'clock onwards, people have got their TVs going. They're walking around like zombies with their phones looking at whatever the latest thing is. So radio is absorbed in the car in the morning. You're stuck in traffic. You can't look at your phone because we shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Some people do. You shouldn't be. So you have time to listen to that interview. So we go for, say, a 7:15, 7:15 in the morning on 7:02. And that's when we call it the big interview happens.
Yeah.
And that's when we have at least 15 to 20 minutes to speak to that newsmaker, corner them, and then ask them the questions that you want to know. And that's how that works. So radio's still got its golden function. It really does.
But how do we sort of keep that attention? Because we hear about it all the time, right? You hear that word brain rot, and maybe that's not a great word to explain it. But, I mean, there's ways that these days you can even fast forward a TikTok 90-second clip, and you get people doing that because 90 seconds is so long. How do we combat that? How do we keep the guest entertained?
You see, that's an interesting question. So we use the wow factor. The wow factor. What's coming up on the show? This is what's going to be happening. Now, we've got access to people. We've got access to newsmakers. So you may have that on X or on Facebook or Insta or one of the others. But we're going to bring you that person right now. It's the immediacy of radio. You have the interest rate changing. It changes at always about 3:10 on an idle Thursday afternoon with our Reserve Bank governor. By 12 past 3, it's on the radio and you know about it. So it's that magic. It's that instant. Now, of course, you can load that up onto your social media. But if you have your trusted sources, your trusted news, you'll go to that radio station. That's where we are. So as much as video killed the radio star, no, it didn't. We actually quite fine at the moment.
I actually think you hit the nail on the head right there, right? And I think you mentioned trusted source.
Yes.
And I think that's very important because look at AI today. AI is dominating all social media, right? To the point where you don't actually know what's real anymore. I mean, just a simple thing like I love movies. I love watching movie trailers. The recent thing is now the new Avengers trailers are being released. But there's so many fake ones that I actually stopped watching the trailers because I'm like, okay, I don't know what I'm watching. Is it real? Is it not real? And I think that's maybe a great point there as to why radio is still seen as it's trusted. You know you're getting the right people on. You know what you're hearing is actually the correct story.
Yeah. Also, you have your host, the person that you watch or you listen to on radio. And that's the most important thing. So you know when Mohammed's going to be there that things are going to be fine. You'll get the right information. You have different types of hosts. You have a Piers Morgan. You have all these people who are a little bit, I don't know, off the left or the right or whatever the path is. But you know who they are and you know what you're going to get. But radio is exactly that. At 6:15, I will get the weather. At 25 past 6, I'll get your business. I will get that trusted source and I'll make sure it's fine. Now, of course, which media are trustworthy? That's the other thing as well.
Yeah, that's very true.
Because South Africa's different. In the United States, you've got Fox News. That's pro-Trump, and there's pro-right, pro-Republican. New York Times is Democrat in the United States. But if you have a look at what we have over here, it's a little bit different. But look very closely at some of the media houses here. Sometimes the devil is in the detail.
And you mentioned, just before that, you mentioned about the radio host, right? And our aspect of, that's the trusted person, or we grew up with this person, or we listen to this person. But I'm imagining you as a host have come across times where you might not agree with a certain objective view. How do you then stay neutral? How do then you sort of limit your bias or opinion or so on and so forth?
So first of all, let them speak. Everybody has a right to have an opinion, and that opinion should be broadcast. If it's racist, if it's bigotry, no. You cut them down. You shut them down, because racism's got no part to play in our country. But if someone's got an opinion, let's listen to it. If I don't agree with it, then I'll ask questions. I'll say to the person, well, hold on, but that doesn't make sense. What about this? And that's the beauty of it. I get to ask those questions. Or what I'll do is I'll get the listeners to ask the questions. I'll put it out there. And I'll say, well, do you agree with this? Well, give us a call, 011, and I give out the number. And then people phone in, and they will ask the questions. Remember, doing a radio show, it's not about me. It's not about the host. It's about the listener. Everything is about the listener. The listener has to have their questions answered. We've got a WhatsApp line. That's fantastic. We've got a phone line. We've got emails. We've got SMSs still.
Yeah.
We've got all these things. In fact, what we do is we use something called Colony. Now, Colony is exactly that. We have Facebook, we have WhatsApp, everything comes through, and you have your different messages there.
Yes.
And from that, let them ask the questions.
Oh, that's very interesting. Going back to the aspect of the host, right? Now, as we mentioned, you've been in the industry for 30 years, right? In any other industry, there's always that pressure to sort of evolve with the times. I got to keep up with the new generation coming in. Is it the same in the radio industry, and how have you sort of navigated that?
I think we're navigating this as a country. And in fact, I'll give you an example. There was an example with, I think it was Pretoria Girls High, where young girls, black girls, were wearing their hair in a certain way. They wanted an afro. And now a traditional private school, you have to have your hair all tied up and all the rest of it. And this became a huge issue. But we're living in a brand new country still. 30 odd years into our democracy, 32 years this year into our democracy. But we're still navigating these issues and issues of culture. And at the end of the day, the young girls involved, they said, we will wear our hair the way we want to wear it. These are discussion points. So what do? You invite the young girls onto the show. You invite their parents onto the show. And we have a robust discussion. Because The only thing constant about everything is change. Everything is changing. And we've got to talk about cultures and the way we do things here because we've got to learn about each other. And that's, if you learn about each other, then racism is out the window. Learn about the people you know nothing about.
I think that's honestly a brilliant point, and it actually made me think of a clip, interview that was with Denzel Washington. I don't know if you've seen this clip, and it is around race versus culture, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And I think those lines get skewed a little bit, and rather confused a little bit. And I love the way he put this because they were asking him about a particular movie and why it needed an African American director. And is it a race thing if they had to get a white director or a Asian director? And I always loved his response. And his response was, it's actually never a race thing. It's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
And he gave two examples. He's like, two of the greatest directors of all time is Steven Spielberg and Martin Scorsese. Steven Spielberg made Schindler's List. Martin Scorsese made Goodfellas. Now, Steven Spielberg probably could have made Goodfellas, and Martin Scorsese probably could have made Schindler's List.
Sure.
But there was a cultural aspect. And he said that's the part that sometimes we blur, is that it's not we need an African American director because he's a certain color. It's because he understands when somebody of color wakes up, they have a certain different routine. And he actually mentioned the hair as a routine.
Yes.
They have to do their hair differently. And I love the point that he always pushed there, is that it's a cultural thing and not a race thing. So I'm really glad you said that, is because I think that is a lot of times a problem that we have, is we make everything racial when sometimes it's just understanding a cultural aspect of it.
You know, the nicest thing is about a breakfast show is if the program management are doing their job correctly, they will have somebody from a different culture on the show, different race, different sex as well. That's also very important. So if you're discussing a topic, you're going to get these different views in your show. And sometimes you as the host, you'll decide, I'm going to talk, this is the view because I think this is the view. And then the news presenter will say to you, but no, hold on a second, you've got this totally the wrong way around. Yeah. Because she is talking to a guy who's got a guy's point of view. So if you have all these different points of view coming in, add the listenership, well then, you've got yourself a nice breakfast show. But if you can have everyone who's the same, I'm a white male, so have 4 white males sitting there and just nodding our heads, oh, that's very one-sided. That really is not a great idea.
Now, obviously, we've mentioned quite a few times, you've had such a lengthy career. And you've seen some of the best moments and, unfortunately, some of the worst moments, not only in this country, but around the world. I mean, you were on the radio at the time when apartheid came to an end.
Yes.
You were in the radio on the horrible day of 9/11, when that horrible incident happened. Probably 2010 World Cup, here in South Africa, a wonderful moment. The financial crash, so on and so forth. Even today with, the situation in Gaza. Tell us a little bit about the different experiences that you've had and what you've sort of taken away from being on the air during all these really major events in history.
You know, it's such a good question, that, and you've got to distance yourself a little bit from it. You can't get too personal with the situation. I remember, I mean, there've been days where I think back. I remember working at a radio station, and Nelson Mandela, Madiba, came in, sat down where I used to sit, sat in my chair, and for an interview, it wasn't with me, it was with somebody else, but I was there. I got to ask a few questions. I was just the news presenter at the time. And there was Madiba sitting closer than we, sitting from each other. And he said, oh, I can't hear anything. So I said, sir, just use my headphones. There is Madiba sitting with my headphones on. I haven't washed them since. They're still sitting there in a box.
That's amazing.
You know, it's that kind of thing. It's just, this is Madiba using my headphones. This is the kind of thing. So you see the birth of democracy. I remember reading the news and crossing to the new president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela, in the studio next to me. I read the news and introduced him. So these are the things. 9/11, the horror of it. Seeing this unfold and going, a plane has gone into one of the towers of the World Trade Center, and then going, but another one's just gone in. This is America's under attack. And you say those words, America's under attack. It's chilling.
Yeah.
It's absolutely chilling stuff. But these are the things that you go through. You still do stories every single day. 14 young kids
Yes.
killed in a minibus crash, and a minibus just veers into a truck, and you shudder.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It really is terrible. I've had one I'll never forget. I think one of the things that stuck out the most, and I still don't know if I handled it correctly, was a hijacking outside of Alex. And a young blonde girl had pulled out. She'd been working as a university intern at a clinic there or something. And she pulled out, and a guy hijacked her and shot her dead.
Oh. Wow.
And a mom phoned up, and we had her name. And a mom phoned up saying, I can't get hold of my child. I can't get hold of my daughter. I need to know, is it her? I need to know.
Sure.
So I thought, well, ma'am, you're going to need to speak to the police. You need to speak to the authorities. I can't help you. And she just lost it.
Yeah, I
it.
mean, yeah,
This
can
is my
imagine, yeah.
daughter, Ray White. I need to know. And I said, fine, what's her name? And she gave me the name, and I said, it's not your daughter. Your daughter's still alive.
Wow. Yeah.
And I didn't have the authority to do that. But it became a desperate situation for a mom. If it had been her daughter, then what?
Yeah, I can imagine.
But it was not her daughter.
And how do you sort of separate that? Because I can imagine those moments sit with you. I can imagine. You know, you mentioned sitting live while something horrible happened, mom phoning in and having to make that call. I'm sure that's something that's very difficult to deal with. And when I say this, you possibly do this more than most people do. How do you manage to sort of separate that?
I think you do. I think if you are a doctor and you go in and you operate on a patient and the patient dies, I think it would really get you down. I think it really does. But I think eventually you not to become immune to it, but it's the story. Remember, we are recording history. We're not responsible for history. We're not the villains. We're not the bad people. We are the people who are holding up a massive mirror to the world to say, look, world, this is what you look like at the moment. And then we put the mirror down. So we are recorders of history. That's it. So you do see things that horrify you, like children in a minibus taxi accident. It absolutely horrifies you. If a country is invaded, we're recording history. I go home and I have supper, because you are so immune to what's going on. Obviously, you have your own opinions, but it's only, I think, when children are affected that it still hurts a bit. But apart from that, you're recording history.
Now, today, there's a lot of people that are very interested in breaking into that sort of genre, breaking into radio, breaking into media. But as we know, it's quite a tough industry to sort of take that first step. What would you say to those people that are looking and have this interest in this career? What advice would you give to them to be able to take that first step?
That's a fantastic question. Now, I'll be honest with you, getting into radio is difficult. There's only certain radio stations, only a certain number of radio stations. So there is that aspect and element. But in saying that, if it's your dream, do it. Don't give up on your dream just because there's only a few radio stations. Start with podcasting. Start with podcasting. Exactly. Put something together, get a radio mic, and get it together. Now, and then think about it. What do you want to talk about? What are the big things you want to talk about? And then start talking about them with your friends. Then think, how am I different from everybody else? Because somebody starts in radio, and we've all got a great radio voice, so we can talk like this, and we can back announce a song. That's not how radio people talk. Talk like I'm talking. This is my voice. You've got your voice, etc., etc. We've got our voices, so what I'm trying to say is just be yourself. Don't give up on your dream and start it. Media is changing. So how is media changing? At the moment, we've got FM. On FM, we've got, 40, 50 radio stations max. Now it's going to DAB and it's going digital. So what that means is you can have 1,000 radio stations there very soon. And this is all about to open up. So don't give up on your dream, but be you and be original.
I actually like that. And I remember I was a very big fan of a particular morning show. And they were speaking, it was a very, very popular morning show. And they were speaking about, the recent guy, how he got onto the show. And he actually made a very interesting revelation. He said, when in my interview, I critiqued the original show.
Wow.
And they were like, oh, that's very interesting. And he said, yes, because you got to look at it this way, is that they don't want the same people to be on the same show.
Yes.
I don't want two Ray Whites. I have the original. I don't need another person that's going to imitate Ray White or be exactly like Ray White. I want somebody completely different.
Exactly.
And as you go that, be yourself. And he actually said, if you're a fan of the show, it actually probably disqualifies you from that job because they want that fresh perspective. So I really like the fact that you said be yourself, because I think people struggle with that. People don't want to, or rather are afraid to do that because they might think that, no, that's not what they want. They have Ray White on that speaks like this, and that's what they want. But no, it's not the case.
No, it's not the case. I mean, Mohammed, you have to be. If you look, Gareth Cliff was a producer.
Mm-hmm.
He became himself, and off he went. Mandy Wiener, she used to do traffic on 702, and she has now the Madeira Port. These are the different names of people who you can't keep them down because they've got these brilliant talents that are coming through. And that's what you do. But how can you be original? There's nothing worse. A piece of advice I will give out, though, is there's nothing worse of trying to be like somebody else, and you're sitting there and you're talking about the great party last night, and hey, everybody, let's have a party tonight again. You know what I'm saying? There's no substance in what you're saying. What are you saying? You got one of these things, so use it and capitalize on it. That's how it works.
My next couple of questions I ask to all my guests, and I'm very interested to see the different responses I get. So yeah, here we go.
Okay, get it.
If you had to go back to any point in your life and give yourself a piece of advice, when would you go back to, and what would that advice be?
Sure, good one. Slow down and enjoy the moment. Slow down. I've got some beautiful memories being at 5FM. Beautiful radio station. Slow down, look at the people you're working with, and appreciate the moment. Always in such a rush for the next best thing. That is the best thing. That was the best thing. 5FM had a slogan, the best years of your life. Those probably were the best years of my life. That camaraderie, I'll never forget. They changed 5FM. They changed the lineup, as radio stations do, and they had to. But I remember it was probably the mid-2000s, and the entire 5FM lineup went off to Namibia on a team exercise. We were on quad bikes. Oh. And I didn't realize then that would be the last time I would work with most of those people. And these guys were legends, the legends of broadcasting. The Alex Jays, Barney Simons of broadcasting. And that was the last time we were together. Slow down. Just slow down. Enjoy the moment.
To be honest, I think, honestly, I can't agree with you more on that. I think it's such an easy thing to say, but it's something we just don't do. Yeah. I think you answered my next question, but in case there is an addition to this, because I think that message was brilliant. But my next question is, what message do you want people to take away from this interview? Now we have slow down. Anything else?
Yeah, I think if you feel it, that is your career, don't let your parents tell you that it's not. I think my parents wanted me to be a school teacher, which is great. I would have been a lovely school teacher, but I'm not a school teacher. I am a broadcaster. So if you want to do this, then do it.
What's next for Ray White? What's next for Ray White Media?
Legacy was important. Legacy is very important to me. So it's to pass on what was once passed on to me. I need to pass it on to the next person, because I only have it for a while. I need to pass the parcel. If I give it to somebody else, then they can take that and develop their skills. So if I can train somebody else, they'll develop their skills. And if one day I'm walking down the street and nobody knows my name, that's okay, because I'll be listening to the radio and I'll hear Mohammed doing a show and I'll go, that's amazing. That's amazing, because he took the training that was passed to me, I passed it to him. And you will pass it on to the next generation. And that's what it's all about. So if you think you're getting into radio to be a superstar and to be famous, sure, you'll be famous. But if you want to be a superstar, go be Denzel Washington. Go be Tom Cruise. But all this is passing on a skill and a trade, as you would do if you were a fireman or everything else. So yes, sitting in that coffee shop one day and hearing Mohammed on the radio thinking, yeah, he got that right. I told him to do that. He got that right. That's it, because the legacy continues. And then please, time for you to pay it forward later on.
No, that's brilliant. I fully agree. I think that's the most important thing because at the end of the day, we don't take anything else with us when
Yeah.
we go down. Um, we just take that legacy. Fully agree. No, brilliant. Great. I can't thank you enough. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed sitting and chatting with you. It's been such a pleasure. Apologies, I'm a little starstruck. I know we mentioned that a little bit
Oh,
earlier,
no.
but it's just been such a pleasure. And thank you so much for being part of the show.
You're welcome, and thanks for the golden microphones. I'm very impressed, by the way.
Yeah,
My first time I've ever seen a golden microphone. They're pretty cool, actually.
brilliant. No, thank you. And I'm going to apologize in advance because I'm going to trouble you to be on this show many, many more times.
Great.
So just remember how much you enjoyed it the first time. And when I call again, you go, oh, Mohammed again.
Mohammed who? Oh,
Yeah.
no, don't worry. I'll be back. I'll
No.
be back.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. All right. That's our show. Thank you once again for joining us for another episode of Chat EBT. As always, my name is Mohammed Ebrahim Tayob. And until next time,